Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top-quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Hey there, it's the Odd Man, and I'm back for another edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. You know, I can't say how much I love hearing those words. It's so awesome to do this each and every week. Anyhow, I really want to thank all of you for the support, and I appreciate you checking out the Audacious Living Podcast. Of course, this is the podcast that will help you live your best audacious life ever. And on today's program, we'll be talking a little bit about the process of finding your life's purpose. You'll hear from Kam Salami, who's the author of a new book called The Sleeping Giant, Clearing the Path to Success and Abundance. And, you know, you'll have an opportunity to hear a very cool story from Kam about how, you know, he found his purpose when he moved to North China. He lived there for 4 months with Buddhist monks in a temple and forsake, you know, the world and dedicated himself to this enlightening experience. He came back a different man with a deeper understanding of the universe and inner wisdoms that were all developed through meditation, which was completely new to him. And that's what's really remarkable about the whole story. And I really, really, really think that you'll enjoy that. So without any further ado, let's just slide on over and give you an opportunity to hear from Kam.
I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Okay. Sure.
No, I was saying that you. I want to talk a little bit about your journey that led you to this place to write this book.
Oh,
You had such a diverse background.
right. Yeah, I know. I had quite the journey for sure. I'll be happy to share that with you. So, I was raised up in Iran, so it was during the time there was a huge war. I was about a year old, and my family moved over to Germany, and I grew up in community housing pretty much my whole entire life. I was, my family was trying to make ends meet because we're refugees at the point. And then we flew down to Canada when I was about like 12 or 13. And again, you know, just back in community housing. And then when I was in high school, I was at a guy named Johnny Tran. So this Asian guy, but he was from Vancouver. And his dad was high up in the triads, like a big gang member. And I wasn't doing well in school, and you know, it's not that I was doing well I just wasn't believing in myself, right? And you know, it was skipping school a lot. So he was like, look, why don't you skip school, come with me, we'll go to Vancouver, and you know, we'll produce drugs together, and we'll do all this other stuff, and you know, you can join the triads. So me being 16 years old, I was like, you know what, like, what other opportunities are there for me?
Well, it's seen as an easy way out, right?
It was the easy way out, right? So with that, I was like, you know what, like, you know, as much as I want to, just something overtook me. I was like, you know, from the 8 grades in school that I had, I failed 5 of them, and I was in grade 10 at the time, and I was 16. And you know what, I said, I'm going to take a chance at myself, and I joined the military. I joined the Canadian Army, and I did really well in there. And then, you know, I spent my summers in boot camp, and they just, you know, they beat the hell out of me, put me back, and, you know, they set me straight. And when I came back that year, Johnny's like, so what do you want to do? You want to come to Vancouver? And I'm like, no, I'm good. And then he went to Vancouver, and, you know, I'm pretty sure he's in jail right now. I'm pretty positive. Or he's probably some high up level, you know, in the triads. But from there, I was in the military, and, you know, I was doing really well in school at that point because everything seemed easy, you know.
Sorry, Kam, I want to jump in real quick. So tell me how that military influence or that experience influenced your decision to not take the easy way out.
You know what? I honestly, like, I realized life is only as hard as you make it. And school for me was always something that I didn't believe in. It's not that I didn't believe in it, the teachers didn't believe in me at that point. So I set the standard for myself because the teachers didn't believe in me, you know? So it's almost like, because the teachers didn't believe in me, I didn't say to myself, you know what, like, forget these guys, I'm going to prove them wrong. I bought into it. I bought into the fact that maybe I'm not good at school. And because of that, I actually wasn't well good in school. But when I got in the military, they pushed me past my comfort zone, right? They just pushed me to these new realms that I've, like, you know, when I was about to quit and you're in the middle of a forest, you know, you're sore, you haven't slept, you're like, you know what, you have to go. So I was doing all these things, and mentally I was overcoming my own battles. And when I came back to school, even though the teachers still didn't believe in me at that time, I was like, you know what, this is easy, I can do it. And so I put all this stuff together. I started working, and then when I was like 20, I was 19 or 20 years old, I got hired by the police department. I was the youngest police officer hired by in Canada here, one of the police services, and I just did well in school. And you know, at that time, I had a lot of not to say street connections, but I was like driving around and I was meeting a lot of guys. And at the end of the day, I didn't have that police officer interaction with people. I had that normal human interaction, you know, like when you're coming from a genuine place. And I made a lot of friends that way, especially, you know, even if I arrested a guy, you know, yeah, you know what, he made a bad judgment in that moment. It's not a judge of his character. It's a bad judgment call. So because of that, I was able to work my way up. I got did some secondments in the drug unit. And then from there, I did secondment in homicide. I worked in the wiretaps there. We're you know, chasing down some hitmen. And then from there, you know, I had some close calls with policing, and I had a very, very traumatic call where I was going to get shot and killed. And then I said, you know what, life's too short to be doing this. And then I was then I went through like these battles of anxiety and like depression. And then, you know, the easy way again was going to a doctor and getting medication for it. You know, like, you know, you have a problem, the easy way is go to a doctor and say, oh, my head hurts or this hurts, and then they prescribe you something, right?
The medication.
So with that, I said, again, I'm not gonna. You said. That's it, right? And I was like, I'm gonna take meds for depression or anxiety, and what is that gonna do for me? You know, that's gonna give me a short-term kind of moment where I'm just gonna take these meds, and then I'm gonna feel good for the time being. But then I'm reliant on this, right? And what I learned in the military is you got to be reliant on yourself and not other things. And I took this big leap of faith and, you know, packed my bags and flew out to China. And it was a weird way that it happened, because at that time I was in the temple. I became a Buddhist, and I stopped eating meat and stuff. And they said, well, look, we understand you are going through some struggles. Would you take this opportunity to go in China? And no, they didn't even tell me China. They said it says a retreat, and I said, okay.
So you're thinking the beach?
I'm like, all right, I'll go. Yeah, I'm thinking. I think I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go. You know, to some community place where everyone's by the beach, just having fun. And I knew nothing about meditation. I wasn't even spiritual per se. I knew about spirituality, but I wasn't really spiritual.
Right.
And then so I jumped on this. It was weird how it happened. And then the way they said, they're like, look, you have to really commit yourself if you're going to go and do this. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do whatever. It's fine. Let's go. Let's do it. And they're like, okay. And then they booked me my flight to China. And I wasn't prepared for it. I was like, okay, China. And they're like, yeah, it's a small place. So I get to China and I get off the plane, and there's a guy obviously waiting for me, and he had a sign, and I jump in his car. It's midnight. It was nighttime. I didn't speak Chinese. I was totally lost. And this guy doesn't speak a word of English either. So I'm in the back of a car, not knowing where the hell I'm going in a brand new country in China. And I didn't fly into like Beijing. I flew into Shenzhen, which was one of the, it's like this remote place in Taiwan. It's like, there's no tourists there. It's not a tourist country. So then they start driving. I'm like looking out the window and there's no lights. It's just a one road, and it looks like I'm going up this mountain, this cliffside, and I'm like elevated in the car. And I'm like, okay, I have no idea where I'm going. And I start panicking, and I'm like, where are we going? The guy's like, oh, and he starts screaming in Chinese, and he's like, okay, okay. And he starts getting on the phone. And, you know, luckily I had one person that I knew, and they were connecting me back home. And they're like, don't worry, you're fine, you're safe. And I had a little bag. And he gets to this, he goes up this dirt road, up this mountain. And we come up to this, like this, it looked like it wasn't like, you know, when you imagine a temple, you're imagining like, you know, this crazy it looked like a compound. You got these big red doors. And he dropped me off. He's like, grab your you get my luggage out. And he drove away. And I'm standing outside this door, and I pull out my phone, and there's no reception because I'm on top of middle of nowhere. And I'm freaking out at this point. So I bang on this door. Like, it looked like something from the movies. I'm banging on this door, and this monk opens up the door, and he's like, you know, he brings me in. He walks me across and puts me in a room. And I'm like, what is going on here? And this was nighttime. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go sleep it off. We'll figure out this nightmare tomorrow. Because I had an entrance date, and then they were going to book my exit date when I was ready to come back. So I'm like, well, how am I going to get a call? I can't even call. I can't even make a phone call. I don't have. So the first thing I do was in the morning, I woke up, I pull out my phone. I'm trying to get Uber because I'm like, I'm going back to the airport, and I'm flying back to Canada because this is crazy. Because I'm like, I wasn't feeling comfortable. I didn't speak a lick of Mandarin, and everybody spoke Chinese there. And they woke me up in the morning. They gave me these robes to wear, and I looked around, and they had this like cafeteria area, and I realized like in the morning it's a full-on compound that is run by monks for monks, but it's like regular. And I've noticed that people who go there are like, there's like orphans that get delivered to the door there, and they're raised by these monks there, and they have their own greenhouse. They grow their own like their own food, and it's all like rice and potatoes. And it was, so the very first week was just challenging because I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, they would go to the cafeteria, eat, and then everybody goes in the room and they start meditating, just sit in silence for like hours. And then they would get up again, everybody would eat, come back, meditate. So I just started meditating and doing what I was supposed to do, and this led to the book. And they taught me and developed things in me that I didn't think I had, and that allowed me to push it into writing this book to spread it over.
Kam, I got to tell you, man, you know, you listening to the first half of your life in terms of growing up and getting the police services, you probably could have written a book about that alone and sort of those experiences and how those contribute to where you are. But you add this other layer with these monks in this temple and all of that. It's a phenomenal story. You touched on the book. Let's jump right into it because obviously we're going to talk about that. I love the title, The Sleeping Giant, because what that signifies and what that says, that there's something within all of us, and
100%
to explode, quite frankly. Want to elaborate?
1000%. Yeah. So the book Sleeping Giant is about you. Is about you as a person. There's no tools that you need to awaken this giant within you. And you know, we always look at external things that we need to become our higher selves. You know, let's say we need money to become our higher self, or we need this to do that or that. What spirituality, like I was there, and, you know, they say your third eye opens and all this other stuff. And I believe in that. I believe that we have these mystic powers that are embedded in our genetic biology that we never access because we're so bound by these constructs of like society that we've already developed. Right? Like if you really look at humanity, we've been here for almost 1 million years or plus, right? And we didn't have Instagram. Let give 1,000 years ago. So what do we really rely on? We relied on intuition. We relied on energy. We relied on well-being, on love, and vibrations, and all this other really genuine human stuff that we've kind of lost. Right. And if you look at the Egyptians, they were so in tune with spirituality, and now for some reason we think that we are, but we're really not. We don't even have 10 minutes to sit and close our eyes and think about our day. I mean, right? If you really think about it, how often do you have 30 minutes of the day to just be like, okay, you know what, I'm going to sit in silence? We can't physically do it anymore. But back 1,000 years ago, that's all they did, right? So meditation really, the book is really about you. It has nothing to do about me. It's about your journey and your conquest and your ability to open up different aspects of yourself.
Give me an idea, your own personal spiritual journey. Where were you prior to that experience? Are these sorts of things that you? I'm assuming, obviously, you knew about them, but certainly, I'm assuming you didn't practice some things like meditation. Where were you at that time versus where you came out of that experience?
Before, I was very skeptical of meditation, spirituality. I thought it was very woo-woo. I thought it was for people who aren't, they're a bit detached from reality, and they believe that everything's spirit. But I realized spirituality really isn't that. It's going to be in the future. It's going to be the new, well, not trend, but it's going to be ability for us to reawaken ourselves. I'll give you an example. Let's say running, right? Running right now is a cardio kind of thing that people do. And if you see a guy run outside, you'd be like, oh, okay, he's obviously taking care of his body. Now, let's say give or take 50 years ago, if you saw a guy running, jogging on the street, you think he's running from someone. Because nobody went this exact same thing. We're like the 50 years ago of running, where we look at meditation and spirituality and we're like, well, that's kind of weird. But in 50 years from now, we're going to be connecting with ourselves, with our higher selves. We're going to be connecting with spirituality. And that's going to be like, if you have time to go to the gym and work on your body, you have time to work on your mind and your spirit, because really that's within you. And yeah, you can't see it. Yeah, you can't touch it. Yeah, you can't see it in the mirror. But I promise you that if you really awaken this giant within you, which what the book really talks about, you have the ability to just really just hit some new homes about what reality is, what reality means to you, where you can really stand. And the book, I touched on it. If you read the book actually from start to finish, it's only 90 pages. It's nothing. It's not written for. It's a quick read. It talks the first couple chapters. It talks about quantum physics, and it talks about thermodynamics of laws of energy, and it talks that energy cannot be destroyed, and our souls are energy, right? And if you can't destroy energy, and our souls are energy, and we produce energy, our bodies naturally produce energy. Then even if our physical bodies aren't here, our spirits are still here. Right. Our consciousness is still here. Who you are is still here, will still remain on this plane, whether it's, the third dimensional world, as we call it, or in the spirit world, And so it talks really about, first it puts the science into the book, and then it talks about the chakras, which we all learn about in Buddhism. And then it gets into really how to awaken that giant of stillness, meditation, becoming aware of your own thoughts. It's a really, honestly, it's made as a beginner reading for someone who says, look, like, I know nothing about anything about spirituality. I just want to pick up a book and know everything I can learn within 90 pages and then get into it. That's what it's meant for. I wrote it as for the person who's like me, who doesn't like reading too much. I love reading, but I don't like reading these massive 500 page books where it has one point in it. This book really touches everything. It's kind of like this meditation for the Cole's Notes of meditation and spirituality. Yeah. And it's where you get into it, read it, and you kind of get the gist of it.
I think what I appreciated having the opportunity to read your book. I think one thing I really appreciated in the earlier chapters, you sort of talked about the science, but there was a direct connection to the human condition. So, for example, you spent some time about vibrations and what that means, and provide some context around good vibes and bad vibes.
Right.
Elaborate on that a bit, because I think that for me was like, oh, I never looked at it that way.
Yeah, and if you look at real science of what vibration really is, our atomic particles, this is again science stuff, our atomic particles, which is comprised of everything, vibrate. They carry a certain vibration. Music carries a certain vibration. And what happens is when someone doesn't align with your energetic vibration, you feel it right away. I think we've all been there where something just doesn't feel right, and you're like, I don't know what it is. And it ends up being true. You see a guy and just something doesn't align, or someone's in your vicinity and they just give you these bad, creepy, weird vibes, or whatever the case may be. You pick up on that intuitively because you're vibrating as a person, and that person's vibration is not in harmony with yours. Again, it's not always bad. It's just something that you guys are totally on different spectrums of different energies. That's really what it is.
Right. Yeah, and again, that was a different take, something that I've never really put any thought to, but I think most people, as you said, most people can relate to that. I've got a bad vibe, or I don't feel, but it is our vibrations being aligned or not being aligned with someone else. So it makes sense. It makes total sense.
Right. And vibrations are instantaneous. And it's not always like, you look at a guy and you're going to see it right away. It's you feel it. And then your emotional side of your brain starts rationalizing why you feel that way. And then you come up with your justifications of why, and again, it may not always be the right reasons,
right,
like him because of whatever the situation may be. But it's just, again, I mean, someone always asked me, it's like, he's looking to find this girl that he can match with. Right. And he's like, every person that I meet, how do I know that if they reject me? And he said, it's you got to look at it in the sense that you guys don't your chemistry, like every person that you talk to, you got to see whether you guys energetically align or not. You can't look at it physically, because you can have the best person in front of you, great looking, but if you guys don't energetically align, and that's everything about vibes. It's like, we're vibrational beings, and the person that you're with either raises your vibration, makes you feel good after when you leave, and you're like, oh wow, I feel good about myself, or they make you feel terrible and they drain your energy, and that's because they're either getting energy from you or they're on the total different spectrum. So I really encourage, like, as much as I've been in situations where I have numerous amount of friends that I have to cut out of my life, not because that they're bad people, it's just they don't energetically align with me anymore. And your vibes change over time too.
Yes.
What's good for you today may not be good for you 2 years from now. Right. So you may grow and elevate energetically. So you may not be the same person that you were 5 years ago. You have different circle of friends and all. So you got to always be adapting and changing to the new person that you become, hopefully for the better, right?
Well, I mean, that just sort of leads me back. I can hear my mom's voice telling me, be careful the friends you dealt with, right? So I guess she was right on that. The people that influence you. So, but yeah, I guess the vibes and that energy between people. Something else you talk about, Kam, which I know is a tough one for a lot of people, and you talk about the shadows of our past and how to release ourselves from that. That probably is probably one of the most challenging people for a lot of challenging thing for a lot of people, because it's so difficult. Give me some insights in terms of that process and getting out of that, the past transgressions or mistakes or regrets or whatever.
Right. I think if you really, a good mentor of mine, his name is Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he is he's a great mentor of mine, and he talks about how the human brain, he's a neuroscientist. He's super, like, he has a medical degree. He's actually a neuroscientist. And he said that the brain will always want to feel something, whether it's good or bad. So if you give your mind the ability to always feel negative things, you're just giving power to it. And let's say, for example, you do something wrong or something happens to you. And let's say it's like, a spouse cheats on you or something, whatever it is that happens. What happens is your mind will always replay that, because the neural pathways of that give it energy and make you feel something. So the more that you're reinforcing that feeling, it gets deeper and deeper, and it becomes like deep scar tissue. So really, it's about becoming aware of your thoughts. And every time you want to, your brain will automatically want to feel something. So you just got to either give it I'm gonna think about the stuff that happened to me 10 years ago, and I'm gonna feel something, and I'm gonna give that energy, or I'm gonna think about something positive.
Right.
Dr. Joe Dispenza taught me this one thing, and it's I want to share that with you, and I think this is gonna really harmonize prayer and the way that we energize these things. And he taught me, he said, when we pray, why is that all our prayers never come true? And I thought about it, and I'm like, you're right. Every time we pray, usually our prayers don't come true. We pray for certain things, and sometimes they don't come that way. And it's not because that it's the way that you're praying.
Right.
He said that when does someone usually pray for something? Usually when they're in a state of panic or fear or something. Let's say their bank account is like they're gonna be passed on due on their mortgage. They're anxiety driven, they're panicking, they pick up, they start going on their knees, or God, please give me the strength to get out. But in their heart, which is the energetic center, they're feeling they're in a terrible state. So remember when we discussed how we're vibrational beings? So they're praying in a vibrational state of anxiety and fear. So even if they get what they want, then every time they look at that one thing, they reinforce anxiety and fear around that one thing.
Right.
So if I'm in a state of panic and I'm praying for money, even when I get money, I'm gonna have panic and anxiety situated around money because I'm associating that feeling to it.
Mm.
So he taught me the best way to pray for get what you want is you first energetically align yourself to receiving.
Okay.
And so let's say hypothetically, the human body is a biological organism.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep.
And whether you're in Canada or in America, that's not taught. That's a biological thing. Emotionally, just it comes up when you're sad, we cry.
Right.
So when you receive something, so if I were to give you something, if I were to give you a present or give you a toy or whatever the situation may be, feeling that sparked among all human beings is the feeling of gratitude, being grateful.
Yes.
So Dr. Joe Dispenza taught me that says, before you pray for what you want, you close your eyes and you imagine a time that you received something, whether it's the toy of Christmas when you were 10 years old or whatever the situation may be. You feel that, and that will align your energy to receive because you've already received something. That's the feeling that you had. And then you start praying for what you want. And that will allow your energy and the quantum field around you to actually give you that item. Right? Because your energetical centers are open to receive, because it's like I cry every time I think about wanting to get a Ferrari or something. When I see that, I'm going to cry. I'm not going to be happy about it because I'm energetically really disassociating the fear and panic to what I want. So that when we go back, when you're asking that question about like how do we get past the shadows of the past, is the same situation that we're constantly giving it power, and every time we think about a certain thing, and it gets to a point where they've done studies that when we look at traumatic emotions, that people don't even know the event anymore. When you ask them to recollect the event, so tell me what happened the time that you felt such and such, 9 times out of the 10, they don't even remember the full entire event. They just know the feeling. Yeah. So they're just attached to that feeling. They don't even know, like it's like something happened 10 years ago. They don't even remember anymore how it happened or the whole entire event. They just know, oh, I felt this is what happened. So what they're really doing is they're energetically giving that moment this energy, this feeling, and they're constantly going to replay it. They're going to constantly, their neural networks in their brain are constantly going to replay that energy field.
Right.
It's crazy how the human brain conditions ourselves for trauma. It's interesting.
Well, what's interesting is, and I'm certainly not trying to attempt to minimize this, but really what we're talking about here is the power of thought and what we give energy to, aren't we?
Huge.
Wow.
Huge. We give usually 90% of energy to negative things because because that's the first thing that gives us feeling.
Right.
So that's why the brain constantly goes to the negative things, because we feel something, and the human brain, like I said it earlier, just wants to always feel something.
Yeah.
So that's why the human condition is always about negativity and about you feel always bad things, is because your brain just wants to feel something.
Right.
So you got to figure out how you condition yourself to every time that you want to feel something, your brain goes towards the positive. And that's the challenge. That's the human challenge.
Yeah. It's incredible. It really is. And as you start, when you start, take your time and break it down. And I would encourage, we will encourage people to grab your book and have a read through, because when you break it down in the manner that which you did, and even as you explain it now, it just makes perfectly logical sense. This isn't complex stuff we're talking about here.
Absolutely not. And we do everything unconsciously. So we assign these negative emotions unconsciously. We don't even think about it. We don't ever think, why am I always thinking about something, the worst case scenario, and why do I like to feel anxiety or stress or heartbreak over that ex? It's not that you're attached to the emotion. Your brain just wants to feel alive, and it doesn't care whether it's positive or negative. Like, the human brain does not work in negation.
Right.
And negation is the example of, do not think of a green elephant. The first thing you thought about was a green elephant. And the reason behind that is the brain never thinks about negation. It's never about, I am not going to do something. It just thinks in images. And the minute I said, do not think of it, your brain just doesn't even care about do not think. It just imagines the green elephant. So the human brain never thinks about negation. It doesn't care whether it's positive or negative. It just wants to feel something.
That's right.
Right.
So you use a term in your book, decorating our prisons. This is very much in line with what we're talking about, isn't it?
Right, 100%. We decorate our own prison walls, and we get stuck in our walls, and we never see beyond it, because we're comfortable there, and it's hard. These are hard cycles to break.
Right.
And it's a lot of inner work. Like, I don't have the solution overnight for you. It's not something that you really got to say enough is enough.
Right.
If you're constantly feeling depressed over or sad about whatever the situation may be, whether it's a loss of loved one, and you're constantly attaching yourself to that emotion, you're gonna just keep attaching yourself, and you're gonna give strength to that neural network.
Right.
That's all you're doing.
Right. I really appreciate taking the time, and thanks for sharing some insights on your book. There's so much things that I was reading through and even making notes of myself. I mean, you touched on things like trusting your gut, and that's another big one for a lot of people, because in order for us to aspire to that higher level, sometimes we have to take chances and have to take risks. I mean, your leap of faith, as the example that took you to China, where you didn't speak the language, you didn't know anybody. Those are things we're talking about, aren't they?
And 100%. And I feel like the universe usually has a plan for you. And as maybe as closed door as it feels today, I promise you that it has the best intentions for you. And maybe something, today doesn't feel right that you're doing, but many times people for example, let's say relationship, someone breaks up with somebody and they're like, oh, I'll never find another 2 years later, they're with the love of their life and they get married, and they're like, oh, I'm so happy that I ended that relationship, because that opened me up to get something better for myself.
And that's really the key. Kam, where I know the book's on all the platforms. If people want to get more information or connect with you, where can they do that?
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I'm available. You can hit me up on Instagram, Kammy Life. I produce music as well. That's a big passion of mine. So you can always hit me up on Instagram. You can send me an email, Kam@mysway. Or you can, I'm available. You can always shoot me a DM, and I'll be happy to respond. The book's on Barnes and Nobles. I'm available on Amazon. It's even available on eBay. At the end of the day, for me, it's not about financial, monetary things. It's about you becoming your best higher self. So that's all I care about. Because I know I took it right.
No, and that really is the goal, right? So your best higher self, and I think you've provided a good, at least starting blueprint for us to get there.
Right, I appreciate that.
All right, thanks for the time today, Kam. Appreciate it. All right, all the best.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
The process of discovering our life's purpose isn't going to be the same for everyone. In Kam's case, he needed to pack his belongings, move to China, and submerge himself in the Buddhist culture to unlock his sleeping giant. But please understand this. That's what worked for him, but it's not necessarily the direction or path that we all have to go down. This is really a question that's been asked over and over again throughout the years. How do you find your life's purpose? Well, there really isn't just one answer to that question, but rather there's a collection of little things that you can do to help point you in the right direction. Here's 4 quick ones for you to digest before we go. Number 1, stay curious about life and the things going on in the world around us. Because the reality is the world is much bigger than our little sphere that we live within. And plus, how else can you have an impact on the world if you don't know what's happening in it? Number 2, find good, reliable sources of learning and expand your understanding. And that could be through books, through blogs, or podcasts, just like this one. Number 3, our past experiences can be of value to others, so it's important to share them when at all possible, whether they're good or bad. But please don't bury them. Instead, use them as lessons to help and uplift other people. And then lastly, remain open-minded. Our life's purpose may not immediately make sense or fit like a glove right away. It may take some massaging for things to fall in place. But ultimately, in the end, things work out. And there you have it. Stay curious, keep on learning, share your experiences, and maintain an open mind. And although I said 4, let me add one more for the folks in the marketing and branding department. Be your audacious self. Hey, well, that's it for me. Thanks as always, and best of luck on your journey to find your life's purpose. I appreciate you tuning in to another edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to others, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.